it might disappear sometimes. Please let me know. Thank you, Shujat. A little thing about traveling flavors, the talk. I'm a chef. And here I am as a chef. I'm going to talk food because that's something I'm obsessed with. I use the word obsession. Shujoy Prasad Chatterjee is a very good friend of mine, and when he read Traveling Flavors, he felt he wanted to hear more stories. Because I have a lot of food stories and incidents in the book. Every food, every taste, every flavor, every aroma has a story behind it. And he wanted to hear more stories. And as I delved within myself, I found that all of us really have food stories within us. I feel my food story journey started when I was not even a year old. My aunt, that's my Choto Pishi, my father's younger sister, used to tuck me under her arm, and the Bengali house had these huge mud ovens where you put a huge wok on and you first cook the vegetarian stuff and then you wash it out and you cook the non-vegetarian stuff, korai, what we call. And she used to tuck me under her arm and she used to cook. And she used to put spices in and she used to put gravies in, and I used to sneeze or smile or be cranky depending on what the taste was coming or the aroma to my nose. About 2 days ago, she told me another story, that she used to hold me on her knee while she used to sort which vegetable was going into which curry. As you know that we Indians are very careful about the shape of vegetable we cut for each curry. A fish curry has a different cut of potato. A fish, another potato, simple potato dish like aloo dum will have a different cut of potato. So she used to sit and rate those and also the spices going in, and she used to continuously loudly talk to me about it. I wasn't even a year old, but if anybody came and talked to her then, I used to be very cranky because it was my time with food. So I think the startings of the obsession was there already. While I talk, I'm going to cook. And we will start with a Spanish dish. To me, food is all about erotica, and I mean erotica in the purest sense, where we taste, smell, feel, and it is a passing sensation. Or we would have one rice pudding and be happy for the rest of our lives. No, we go back for the rice pudding. That is erotica. Love is ever ending. Maybe. Sorry. But erotica is a sensation. It's a metaphor for a sensation. And a metaphor is always better than articulation, because sometimes articulation dulls the indulgence. So what we will start with is, I'll show you what we're doing. We're mixing some tastes in here, some flavors in here to create new flavors, which the Mediterranean people are amazing with. In fact, I am doing both Mediterranean dishes today from the Middle East. This is a Spanish one. We are going to take some zucchini strips, which is bland in taste. We are going to, this you can do very easily at home for a canapé or something. Some dates, which have been de-seeded. Majdoul dates, if you get, I've seen dates this big in the Middle East. Lovely juicy dates, and we're getting Majdoul dates in India also now. We take a piece of cheese, an Edam would do, but Edam is a little flat. Cheddar is better because it's salty. So salty goes into sweet. This is so erotic. Then we wrap it in bland. Then we skewer it to hold them raise. And we're going to work with these. We first, now this is going to be a salty, sweet, bland thing. So what we need is something, which word is missing? Hot. We're going to go hot. So we're going to put on the gas. This is a dish I developed myself after having Spanish salsa. And in the south of Spain, there is a lot of Arab influence because there was the Arabs who brought in the irrigation system really. And also their food and their spices. In fact, they're so cheek by jowl in those countries that sometimes when you cross borders, you do not actually realize that it's only a certain, like the aubergine. All over the Middle East, the aubergine is different in different country. But the aubergine is like anybody who's been to Turkey has eaten Imam Biadi, the Imam fainted. It's aubergine dish. In fact, a new Turkish bride is supposed to know at least 20 dishes on aubergine. You know, it's the national vegetable. So even the aubergine, but it just changes as you cross the border, but it's a national vegetable all over the Middle East. So are dates, of course, which you find, olives, stuffs like this, which you find everywhere. So we're going to heat up a little olive oil, and we are going to, sometimes what I do, I roast my bell peppers. That gives a different taste to Bell peppers, then frying them. But it depends on the bell peppers. These are red bell peppers. If anybody has any questions, please stop me and ask. And we are going to fry them because these were a little peppery, not too sweet. If they're sweet, it's better to roast them. But if they're a little peppery, roasting makes them smell a little burnt. So I'm frying them. So it depends. This is what I've learned about food as I grew up. That the treachery is not in the eater. The treachery is in your daily ingredients. Today the tomato is sweet, tomorrow it's sour. The flour has more water, you have to put in more butter for the pastry. And it's not written in stone. Every day you go back and you start from scratch. Today the fish came in smaller than yesterday. This is the beauty of a relationship with food. It's ever changing, it's never boring. And the same dish every day can be different. So I was brought up in an artist's house. My father was an artist. And I was brought up, if this is disturbing, I hope the sound's not disturbing everybody too much. And he was a cook. So the house used to fill with the smell of spices and brushes soaked in turpentine. I remember him working on his canvas, putting his brush in the turpentine tin, going into the kitchen, working on the wok, putting in something, tasting it, walking back to his canvas and working again. So the kitchen was not a ritualistic place in the house when Dad was there. It was Baba was there. It was not a ritualistic place. It was something you walked in and you did because it was a part of the enjoyment of what you were doing. To my mother, it was a very, very serious place. We were not allowed into the kitchen. I thought it was highly tyrannical at that time, and I still think so, but sometimes now I get a glimpse into why. When we are in control of a certain area of our lives, suppose at home mom is in the kitchen, whether I am an artist, whether I'm a musician, whether I'm a theatre actor, whether I'm a chef, I have certain secrets or rituals with which I work. I'm not always open to people walking into my ritualistic space. The kitchen was a ritualistic space. This is my space and I work here. Don't walk in. I remember once she had made some dough for roti, the Indian bread, and she wouldn't let me enter the kitchen, so I was being naughty. I walked in, took off the cover from the dough, and I made a smiley face on it with dough, and I covered it back and I came out. And I could hear a shriek with anger when she went in. Who did this? You know, but to me food was fun. So I remember that irreverence and yet that absolute, what is forbidden? Always words of passion or words which are forbidden are usually attached to food, if you have noticed. The forbidden fruit, a potent brew. Why? What is forbidden? Pleasure. And you cannot capture pleasure. That is momentary. So food was one of the first things in any culture which was forbidden when control was put on. Widows were forbidden from eating things, slaves were forbidden from eating things, only the rich could eat certain things. The forbidden, the withholding of the pleasure of food has been the politics of control. Also, if you look at our lives, whether it's time of affluence, whether it's time of death, whether it's time of happiness, whether it's summer, whether it's winter, what changes? Our kitchen. What we are cooking in the kitchen. It is food that changes. The life impact of a family or a people or a nation can to a large extent, and their politics, be gauged by looking into their kitchens. What is happening in the kitchen? What are they eating? Are they eating meat? Are they eating fish? Are they eating vegetables? Are they eating boiled? Are they eating spicy? Food and politics, very important. I learned this as I have traveled in my own country and also as I lived in New Delhi when I was young. Mrs. Subramaniam used to stay above us and Mrs. Sekho used to stay on the ground floor. We Bengalis were like sandwiched in the middle, and every time Mrs. Subramaniam put curry patta into her sambar, Mrs. Sekho would say, I'm walking out of this building. I cannot live here. I cannot stand that smell. Every time Mrs. Sekho put a hing choke into a dal, Mrs. Subramaniam will say, I don't know how they eat this stuff. But when they sent their food to each other, they were highly happy and very appreciative of it. I know that. They didn't say it, but they were. So food also defines your identity. It divides nations, it joins nations. whenever I have studied abroad, I'll tell you a little story. The first, when I went to Germany to study theatre, in fact, we were in Berlin, it was very cold, and we were all foreign students, all foreigners. I put in a little tomato paste into the bell pepper. Tomato paste can be bought, but I like making my own tomato paste. I'm going to loosen it a little with water, not stock because I already have enough flavors in there. And I'm going to loosen this a bit. So we were all foreigners, and the only thing we had in common, apart from theatre, which we went to do there, we had in common was our memories. And the first memory I realized when we talked was food. My mom's cooking, what's cooked in my land, we eat this bread. This is the first memory that comes back to you. This is the first thing you remember about home. My girlfriend's cooking, my boyfriend's cooking, what he likes to eat, what I like to eat. My husband loves this. My mother cooks this. And I realized that after some time, whichever country we were from, and we were from all over, the borders fell apart. What kept us together was, oh my God, this reminds me of home. And that was usually food. You don't see a dress in a foreign country, you don't see a painting, and you don't see a building and you say, this reminds me of home. No, what reminds you of home is a taste and aroma, which you cannot put in a box and take away. And that is passion. That is food. I will tell you another little story that happened. It can be a little negative passion also. We were walking down, then East Berlin was East Berlin. I'm that old. And we were walking down the street with our French friend Laura, and with our German friends and our Polish friends, because we were a big mix. I'm going to put in a little bit of green chili into this. Not much, don't be scared. But I just want a little bit of heat in this and a bit of chili flakes. And it was bitterly cold. And we were still talking about the wall coming down and stuff like that. What is going to happen? And debating it, as everybody does. I'm going to put in a little garlic. Just a touch. It's a very simple dish, really. And as we walked, it was bitterly cold. We were hungry, and we saw the first restaurant we walked into. It was a Polish restaurant. And we were like dying for a bowl of borscht with white sausages in it. They make the borscht with white sausages in it and bread. And we walked in and we ordered, and our friend Laurent was still into his tirade about why the East shouldn't come in the West. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. So we sat down and the soups were put in front of us. He saw his bowl and he still wasn't into the food, and he said, "Ich kann das nicht essen, das ist gefährlich." That is dangerous, I will not eat it. Why? It's Polish. By the time we were hungry enough to say you can go jump in a frozen lake, we are having it. But I realized he wasn't eating it not because he didn't like it, he wasn't eating it because it's Polish. And politics and food are so interconnected. Another little story. I used to in London live on, I'm just going to season this a little, on Edgware Road. If any of you know that area of London, it's a very Lebanese area. And nice area with pretty women in hijabs walking around and doing their shopping. So some salt, some pepper. And I had a Israeli friend with me. I know it's London, and I know that the politics of India, Pakistan, or Palestinian Israel does not apply to a London street. But we were walking down, and we walked into a delicatessen, Lebanese delicatessen. They make these beautiful burekas, you know, pastries stuffed with sweet or savory fillings. And I said, "Can we have 2 burekas, please?" Maybe it's my accent, Indian accent. The lady just couldn't catch what I said. So Guy, my friend, Guy Lesniski, he said, "Burekas." And she stopped, and she said, "You're Middle Eastern." The way he said burekas, the ka. And the hair stood at the back of our heads. Why should it? This is the middle of London. And he didn't want to say he was Israeli. He didn't want to say he was Jewish. He said, "Yeah, but I was like brought up in London." Blatant lie. But why weren't we comfortable about asking for 2 burekas? Yeah, you know, politics. And this is just 2 burekas. Food, politics. But he eats burekas, she eats burekas, she is Lebanese, he is Israeli. That's life. So I'm going to chop up a little coriander. I like chopping my herbs just before I'm going to put it in, because otherwise I feel that they lose their flavors. Our salsa is done. I'm going to ask Shujit. Shujit, just take this to the back, and I will finish with the. Now we will see what we do with the dates. So, another little thing, I'll come to that story when I come to Court of Blue. I decided at a certain time while I was doing theatre, my introduction to food, what it could be, was when I ate French food in Germany and in France. It's like sitting at a table and someone from the kitchen actually coming and touching you. He's not there. You can't see him. This is intense love. What I have heard. You feel something about a person who's not there. It's put in front of your face, a beautiful plate, and it says, I love you. And that's, hey, you don't even know me. This is amazing. You put it into your mouth. And this, I realized, is real theatre.